third one.
This is First Overall Podcast, powered by RINGSZN.
Howdy, folks. Welcome to the First Overall Podcast, powered by the company around that man's sweater, Nick Prasad, RINGSZN. This is episode number 11, and this is obviously very special. We're working some things out. We're trying to get the video going, but you might not see us. But you know, we're trial and error with the team. But I do say the team because every single member of the team is here. Of course, I'm Mike Cummings. I already mentioned Nick Prasad. We also have Andrew D'Amato. How you guys doing?
What's up? Glad to be back. Episode 11. We're here. We're ready.
Happy baseball.
Happy baseball.
Almost September, my favorite month.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy. The races have been awesome to see. We're going to be talking about the National League wildcard race in just a moment. But yeah, it's wild. We had the All-Star break. That was already like almost about a month ago, something like that. It's crazy. The summer is just on an absolute tear. It's moving. We got the trade deadline, and obviously that's going to come into play into what we're talking about today. So, guys, yes, the playoffs are actually a lot sooner than we might think, and obviously, as Jays fans, now we're trying not to be biased here, but we're hoping they're going to be there, but we'll see. But obviously, there are going to be a lot of teams to talk about in the postseason, and as I mentioned just a minute ago, the race in the National League is something pretty spectacular. Of course, we have some big names like the Braves and the Dodgers. The Brewers are also leading the Central, and that's a weird division on its own. But it's the wild card race, and obviously more teams make the playoffs now, right? There's more teams to keep an eye on. But it's been quite something, so I'll just read it out for you guys. Right now, we have the Phillies in the top spot in the wild card. The Giants right behind them. The Marlins in there as well. And we cannot forget about the Reds. The Cubs, who've been playing really well, and obviously with their play as late, that really influenced their decision as to how they approach the trade deadline. You can't forget the Diamondbacks. They've been pretty mediocre since since I last spoke about them in that article. And I don't know about the Mets, and then you kind of just go forward with that kind of stuff. Out of this, I'll put you guys on the spot. Out of all of that, like, what do you guys make of this race so far? Is there anybody that you see having an edge? Do you see anybody maybe not being able to make it when it's all said and done?
Yeah, well, I want to focus on the Cubs more and more often than not because they were probably the most interesting team heading into the deadline season, right? They were supposed to be the big sellers with, Stroman at the last year of his contract, or he's got the opt-out, and he was having like a Cy Young first half of the season. Cody Bellinger seemed like he figured out his swing again, back to his MVP form. And then all of a sudden they start winning, right? And it's been pretty incredible. They're obviously playing the Jays right now, this weekend series. But they're an interesting team, right? They're like you mentioned, the Central is just a weird division. So they have a chance, and I think they have more than a chance. I think we can all agree the Phillies are probably locked into that top playoff spot. But with the Cubs, the way they've been playing of late, I don't see them not making the playoffs.
Yeah, it's been very strange, like just the whole thing. Because you kind of go into this year, and the Cubs have a couple guys here and there, but it's not that core anymore, right? No Anthony Rizzo, no Chris Bryant. Mm-hmm. Everybody's gone, and that's obviously going to play a factor into expectations. Like, they do have a couple guys, like you mentioned, Stroman, Bellinger trying to have a bounce back season, and he's absolutely crushing it. I might add, as you said as well. But they've been really hot, man, and it is a really strange division because I think everybody would probably say, and you're a liar if you don't, but I'm going to guess that everyone was saying that the Cardinals were probably going to win that division heading into this season, right? Yeah, right? For
sure.
And they're dead last, so it's like really anything can happen in pro sports, right? They're dead last in that division. The Pirates looked amazing to start off the year. They've kind of come back down to earth, and they find themselves below 500 now. Probably won't be in the playoffs when it's all said and done. But you have three teams in there truly, genuinely vying for a postseason spot. It's really a spectacle.
The Cardinals. You been to St. Louis, Ontario?
I didn't even know we had a St. Louis.
That does not sound real.
Well, there is, because they sold half their guys to the up north. Which is wild. But I'm looking at like the teams under Miami. First of all, it's crazy that Miami's even in the running here. Who would have thought for a wild card spot like that's it's kind of refreshing for that organization, but I did not see that early in the year. But let's go down to Arizona. What happened there, Mike? Like I know we spoke about Arizona early on. I think you kind of just put a hex on those guys, but what happened?
Well, I don't want to take all the responsibility of that first and foremost. So let's just park the brakes on that. But honestly, man, I really don't know. Yeah, we've talked about them before and just talked about how impressive they've been. Obviously, Corbin Carroll like leading the charge there. Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly look nasty. And the team just overall, everyone just kind of seemed to be playing well. And, they went out and made some changes. I said that they needed to address the pitching. They went out. They got Paul Sewald. They did some things that they need to do. I believe Andrew Chafin got sent out as well.
Yep.
They did some things. They did the necessary moves. But for whatever reason, man, it's just really, it hasn't been coming together. I guess they just didn't do enough at the deadline because I think they've been a largely, maybe since the beginning of the summer, really, they've been a 500 team, kind of falling back down into where everyone sort of expected them to be during this season. And, when they were doing well, they were smashing expectations. But now it's strange, man. I mean, I'm not going to count them out just yet, but obviously from what we've seen so far, it's very disappointing, and it's easy to believe that they would miss the playoffs when October rolls around.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point too. Is like you said, they were kind of expected to be basement dwellers, but maybe not as bad as they have been in the past, right? Like you said, about a 500 team, and that's kind of the clip they're playing at now. And it's the streakiness, right? Like you said, you saw it in the Pirates. And all these kind of wild card race teams are kind of in that streak. Like I said, the Cubs were going to be the top sellers. They won on a hot streak, and they added. Miami has just been like a bit of up and down, but they won on a hot streak, and they also added, right? Josh Bell's been a huge addition for them. He's hitting homers like he did in the COVID year, right? And it's just, you kind of got to play your streaks. And unfortunately for the Diamondbacks, even though they added at the deadline, they're kind of on that downhill of that roller coaster, the downhill of their streak. And I agree with you. I think they have the talent on the roster to still turn it around, and they're still close, right? Like we still got time. They're in the dog days now, but it's not that far off. So I agree. I think Arizona still has a chance, but they're just unfortunately going down the wrong side of the roller coaster at the moment.
Yeah, it's been really rough. It's been really rough to see. And you mentioned the Marlins, they've been riding the streaks, and it's funny because they've also been just missing top guys. Like Jazz Chisholm was out for a while, Sandy Alcantara. Well, he hasn't been hurt, but he has not been very good.
Pretty much, it has been missing an amount.
Well, yeah, and you see just how good, he was very good last year, Cy Young winner, right? So you think, okay, well, like they have their ace, and like he still is their ace, but it's just been really strange to see him really fall off this year, and it's kind of disappointing. I'm sure he's disappointed as well, considering where the Marlins are. Yeah, they can make a push. They could be a fun team to root for in the postseason for sure. It's a good team. I think they've done well in terms of what they have on that roster. But yeah, it's when you can kind of push through your top guys not being there for you, whether that be injury or not, that's kind of says a lot about a team. So if the Marlins were really like the full, true Miami Marlins, I'd be really excited to see. But right now they're not. So it really is just a what-if situation.
Go back to Arizona. I mean, yeah, small market, I would say, in that league, right? And they kind of came into this thing, and as you said, like expecting to be at the bottom, and they kind of just strung along. So I didn't expect anything big at the deadline. And actually, we spoke about this like months ago on the last pod, saying that this would be the team to make the splash, right? But I think they're holding well with what they have right now. Seeing Chicago right above them and Cincinnati kind of in the same boat, but look at the teams below Arizona, the teams that we thought would kind of be on the up and up, the San Diegos and the Mets, right? And even the Pirates are sort of built. St. Louis showed their colors really early, but San Diego, like I'm a San Diego fan, and a lot of that thanks to like 3 players, mostly 1 player on that friggin' team. But it's kind of sad to see that, especially with their run in the wild card. Was it last year or the year before? But like they came out of nowhere, and a team of grit, and now they're on the outside looking in, and it's kind of disappointing that they didn't pull anything during the the deadline or anything major at least. What do you guys think about San Diego?
Yeah, well, I think the sentiment of money can't buy you happiness is rung through not just for the Padres but for the Mets as well. I think it's tough, like you said. It's a weird spot because you say money can't buy you wins and championships, but I think in baseball more than anything, it can and it has in the past. That's why teams like the Dodgers and the Yankees are always so good, right? They get those coveted free agents, and the rest is history. But I don't know, and I think Soto talked about it at just the post game a couple of days ago when he said the team just gave up, and that seems to be the issue, right? Like they got obviously top end talent on the field. They got Blake Snell's been one of the best pitchers the entire year. And, they had some injuries, of course, but it's just not a lot of team chemistry. It kind of seems like I hate talking about the culture of the team and all that, but it seems like these are just guys, not that they care more about individual stats than the team, but like you said, they just give up way too easily, right? They just retreat and say, we'll get them tomorrow. But here we are, like only so many tomorrows left. And
it seems like an every man for themselves kind of
yeah.
thing. I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you're not going to win. We're not going to win that way. And they're proving it, right? Like I think they were lower. They didn't do as well as they expected last year, obviously, with pushing for the Dodgers. But this year, obviously, expectations were sky high, and here they are. Like, just where do you go from here? Like, what do you do? You sell the players? What do you think?
Well, it's funny because I think we all expected them to do well this year, and it got to the point where around the trade deadline, there are all these rumors about, are they going to move Snell? Are they going to move Josh Hader? I know Juan Soto was kind of in there. I'm going to say that was probably very unlikely that he was going to get traded. At the end of the day, none of them did get moved. But, that probably was going to be easier said than done. It's just crazy, right? Like, just how south things can go and how quickly things can go south. It's just wild. And, even this week, they had a 2-game series against the Mariners. They got swept in that. 2 games, fair enough, but they didn't do so well in that series. I'm just reading here. They had just 1 run on 2 hits on Thursday in the final of that series, and they held a players-only meeting. Like, it was just bad, and Manny Machado described the loss and I guess the just overall performance in that series as unacceptable. Fair enough. So all those guys are frustrated in that clubhouse. The team as well, obviously the fans, because, they want to do the best. They expect to win. But especially the Padres, who everybody probably had pegged to go very far, potentially win the whole thing this year. So it's just been really strange to see all these top teams, like the Padres, the Mets, these teams that we expected to do so well falter. And a lot of teams are like, well, damn, that sucks for you, but we're going to take your spots now. And that's why we're talking about a very exciting race here in the National League.
I'm going to throw myself under the bus there as well. I'm going to say that I actually picked San Diego to win the National League, if not the Mets, right? So the Mets are down in the dirt. The Padres are down in the dirt. Mike had to bring up the Diamondbacks. They're down in the dirt. I think First Overall Media is really push these guys away. So we got to stop.
Times are tough.
We got to start talking about the Red Sox. That's what we got to start talking about.
We got to talk. Listen, folks. Anybody listening, if there's a team you don't like, let us know. We'll talk about them for you, okay? Because then they're gonna falter.
Yeah.
So we got you.
Well,
we are the curse.
Exactly, and you want to talk about those rich teams that are just not doing as well as expected. We could talk about our very own Nick's favorite team, the Yankees, right? Here's a serious question for you, right? When have we ever seen the Yankees be stagnant at a deadline? And I don't want to say give in, because they're still the Yankees and they still have Aaron Judge and they could rattle off 10 wins in a row and everyone will forget about them, right? But they didn't do anything and they kind of just, nothing major, and they just kind of gave in. Like, when have we ever seen that with the Yankees?
Well, you don't, right? You don't. And I think New York management ownership is realizing that we're giving a bit too much here, and we're old. They're an old team. At the end of the day. They are an old team. You got to give them that. They're going to clean house at the end of the year, in my opinion. That's what's going to happen. Aaron Judge is going to stay. Stanton's going to stay. Rizzo's going to stay. But you got a young flock of guys coming up from the farm system. They're gonna bring some guys up early, I think, to take those spots, because it's a senior home down there in the bottom of the American League.
Trying to run the bases, we see that.
Yeah, it's terrible. I think the only thing exciting to watch about that team right now is Aaron Boone. Right, I'm gonna get a Boone jersey because it's ugly, and Yankees fans are seeing it, and don't know what's happening there, but this is not a year for him. And I know we spoke earlier, like months ago, about the Yankees possibly being that team in the division under the Blue Jays, and now we're looking at Baltimore, which is mind-boggling. But yeah, I don't know. What do you guys see happening in the Bronx in the offseason?
I mean, I unfortunately don't have the free agency list in front of me, but I'm expecting that it's going to be the same thing where they're going to be in the hunt for all these big names, right? And then, they do a pretty good job of landing some big names. They've done it throughout the last couple of years. And that's nice when, you want to get, picked up by the Yankees. It's like obviously such a historic organization. It's the Yankees. There's nobody like them. But man, it's really gone poorly this year. It's weird to see the Yankees so bad, and I know they're battling injuries. Every team does, right? But they've been hit pretty hard by the injury bug, and that sucks. But I don't even really know what you do different, because I feel like they had such a good formula. They haven't won a World Series since, I believe, 2009, but they're still a very competitive franchise every single year. And obviously when you have the money that they make so much damn money, which must be nice. But they utilize that, and you see it on the field with all these big names, big stars, huge contracts. I feel like they had a winning formula, or at least a formula to do well every year, and it's just not hitting this year. So I don't even know what you could change to make that team better, because it just seems like they did the right thing, and it just didn't work out this year.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I also like the thing you just mentioned there, Nick, where it's like a senior's home and they're going to clear house at the end of the year. And you had mentioned they got a lot of young guys coming up, maybe not tier 1 prospects, but some really good guys. And of course, maybe their best prospect, Volpe's been up for most of the year. And I think they're in a tricky position, because at this point, for any other, I want to quote unquote normal team, because let's be honest, the Yankees, the Dodgers, they're in a class of their own in terms of how their organizations are run. And I think for any other normal team, you take a step back, right? You don't buy all these free agents. You let these young guys play. Yeah, it's going to be a tough year. It's not going to be the best baseball out there, but you need to see who's got the potential to continue and who you need to replace and things like that, right? And I don't think the Yankees are run that way, right? I don't think the organization is going to want to do that, right? The Yankees are the Yankees for a reason. They win, and then when they're done that, they win again. So taking a year off and taking a step back from free agency, are they going to throw a whole bunch of money at Matt Chapman? He's supposed to be one of the top free agents this year. Great, he's a great fit, but again, he's another guy that is not the youngest guy in the room. They're going to give him 20, they're going to $200, $300, $400 million, and in 2 years, they're going to be in the same spot with all these aging guys. So I think they're kind of screwed in a sense where they need to take that step back, but I don't think they're allowed, the Yankees can't be bad.
Well, it comes to time. Right? I mean, every team's had to do it. Tampa Bay's played that game for years, right? And look where they are. I think if you take a page out of the rest of the American League East, we look at Baltimore, we look at Toronto, we look at Tampa. I never look at Boston, so I don't care. But yeah, you look at these teams, and they're all playing that card. And you're right. I don't see them. They might spend the money for a few guys here and there, but you got to focus on your core, and you got to develop that core to be able to pummel the rest of the American League East, right?
Yeah.
Toronto has a foundation like that. Baltimore has a full AAA roster on the field, and they have another one ready to come up.
They got two teams.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. And Tampa Bay, I didn't expect Baltimore to surpass Tampa Bay in the East, but that's wild to me. And if it's going to be a Baltimore-Tampa Bay kind of run in September, then I'm not really happy about it, but I am relieved to see that, right? But the Yankees, they got a lot of places to patch up in their organization. They need a closer, right? I know they're trying to develop. Clay Holmes is a good guy, but I don't know if he's the fit for that closer role. And we'll see his numbers at the end of the year, but that's one thing. And they need a good starting four, and they can't hit right now. So it's an all around circle of failure right now. So I think you're right. I think they got to go down that route of rebuilding it a little bit, maybe even a year, maybe even 1 year, Knowing them, yeah, they're the king of that city in terms of sports. They're not gonna let this thing slide. But
No, you can't.
1 year won't kill the franchise.
No, exactly. They're going to still sell tickets. The Yankee hat is the most famous hat in the world. They're not going to be losing money. But you also know how passionate those fans are, right? Judge was breaking records last year and still getting booed if he struck out and didn't hit home run number 57, for example, right? You know what I mean? It's going to be a tough season for the fans, but you're right. 1 year, they need to do it, and it's not going to kill them.
If I'm Brian Cashman, I got one thing to do. I'm going to go get a good bench coach. Because when Booney's out, right, and I'm not going to lie, Booney's the one, if you look at MLB.com or Yankees.com, Booney's the one giving and he's the one out there.
Doing this kind of thing?
Yeah, he's like, you're out. So he's the main attraction. The main attraction on in the Bronx right now. So best of luck to them. I love the Yankees. I'm actually gonna go down to New York in September, and I gotta pick which side I'm gonna go watch a game. And it's hard because now let's turn that page from the Bronx to Queens across the Hudson there. What about that shit show? That's a different topic, man.
I mean, that's a very good way to describe it right now. That's probably the most appropriate way to describe it. And it's crazy how much money has been pumped into that team on that field. Well, what that team was, I should say. There's been a lot of changes. But, Steve Cohen was like, yeah, we're just kind of full sending it. And he did, man. He brought in so many big names. They had some homegrown talent in there. Of course, Jeff McNeil's been there for a long time. Pete Alonso. That was a good team. And then they added, Francisco Lindor, Max Scherzer, obviously that was the big get. Justin Verlander, they really revamped that team. And it's funny because you'd think, and I know he has a lot of injury history, but you'd think a team that loses Jacob deGrom for absolutely nothing was probably going to have some issues. And then they went out and got these guys, but now they are having issues, of course. And funnily enough, neither of those guys play for the team anymore. Neither of Scherzer or Verlander are with the club anymore. They're playing for better teams. Scherzer followed deGrom to Texas. There you go. So it's crazy. Absolutely insane. What the Mets do, I don't know. It's they've been bad, and that's okay. Every team is going to have their tough spots. They're not like the Yankees where it would be strange for the Mets to be bad because we've seen bad Mets teams. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. Where do you go from this? They went all in. And it's not to say they don't have anything else coming in, but they really went all in with the money. Steve Cohen's got an infinite amount of money, it seems, to spend on players, and it just did not go the way that he wanted it to go. And it is just so wild to me, just what we're seeing in New York right now.
Yeah, and
it's a dynamic. The dynamics, and I didn't mean to cut you off there, Andrew.
No, you're good.
I assume you're going to say the same thing, right? You put all kind of like the Padres. You put all these names together, and nothing's gonna click, right? And I think the best thing they did throughout the offseason was Kodai Senga. That was the best move they've ever made, and that's your almost guaranteed win. But I don't know. I feel like, Andrew, you have a better answer than I do on this because I have fucking no clue.
Yeah. Well, where they go from here, nowhere. It's the same thing, right? Scherzer said, Cohen said, we're gonna crap the bed next year, and then the year after that's going to be our year, right? Again, you got to rebuild and all that, and it's going to be easier for the Mets to do so. But I feel I don't know, I'm no fortune teller, but I feel like the Mets were kind of doomed from the start of the season, right? The very first thing that happens is everyone's just ripping on them because they're spending so much money. They're spending more money than the Yankees and Dodgers probably did combined, right? That's it's crazy. Second of all, of course, Edwin Diaz, their most beloved player in that clubhouse, has that unfortunate injury at the WBC, out for the year. One of the best closers in the league, good clubhouse guy from what we hear. It sucks, right? Brings the morale down. And then you lose deGrom again, who's another big guy in that clubhouse, for nothing. And I just think it was shot after shot off the field that was just dragging that I don't want to say desire and will down, right? Because they still had a super talented roster on paper. But I just feel like after seeing all those unfortunate things happen to them, it's just how could they be good, right? And then you see the roster on paper, and you see Verlander come back and Scherzer, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, they're nasty. But then they suck. So I don't know. I think they were just, the baseball gods said, this is not how the Mets do it. This is not what we're doing. We've given you many warnings, and you're not listening to us. So have fun being sellers at the deadline, And I like you said, like we talked about, they just have to continue to be bad, right? Like you can't buy your way out of this. Like they are down bad, and even their top prospects that they're calling up are not doing that well, right? So you're just gonna have to again send it, be bad for a year, and then see what happens.
Yeah. When I opened my phone, I got a score update during the trade deadline, and I forgot which pitcher went first. I think I'm pretty sure it was Scherzer that went first.
I think
if I'm not mistaken.
I think so. Yeah.
So whoever went first, I looked at my phone and I turned it right away on silent because I'm like, I remember Steve Cohen had an interview we talked about months ago, maybe a month and a half ago, and he said that if the team keeps up this pace, it's going to be a yard sale. And the moment they dumped him, I turned that shit off because I'm like, I know I'm going to get 4 or 5 other notifications in the next fucking 12 hours, and that's exactly what happened. And it's a heartbreaker because I like the Mets, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about the Mets. I write for the Mets. Like, it sucks, but you're right. I think it's just not meant to be, and I think they just have to develop here on out. And, like, Verlander, for instance, right? I've seen him pitch quite a ton this year. I watched him play against Toronto, and that... Like, he's not the same Verlander. He is Verlander, but he's not the same Verlander. Another aging team, right?
Exactly.
I mean,
buying up all the old guys.
The reports are out there. Yeah, the reports are out there for the Verlanders and the Scherzers. And, I mean, Kodai Senga's hanging in really well, right? Eventually, the metrics will get out to the rest of the league, and they'll know how to deal with that. But that's where it's at. You know what I mean? And... I don't know what you do from here, but I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at what the Mets got in return. And I do think in a long run, the guys that they did get in return are a positive for the organization. So Drew Gilbert came back from Houston, and so he ranks. I think he's the second overall top prospect of the top 30. For the Mets right now. He was drafted in 2019, 35th round at a high school, and then by Minnesota, and then I think Houston picked him up first round, 28th pick. Used to pitch. He's not a pitcher anymore, but good guy on the middle infield. He can run, he can steal bags, and he's ranked. So this is a guy they want to keep around and not move. You got to keep that guy static and build him as your next dude. And if after a while you figure out this is not going to work out, then you make your move from there.
And that's the important thing, right? Like, you can't get carried away because these guys aren't going to be ready tomorrow to be MLB stars, right? It takes time. So, say, for example, next season comes and they have a little bit of success. That's not the time to just ship these guys out for more aging guys at the deadline to make a push. You know what I mean? Like you mentioned, you got to let these guys cook a little bit and develop. And that's how you build winning ball clubs, right? And we'll see. Steve Cohen, he seems like he knows what he's doing after the deadline. Before deadline, questionable at best. But he seems like he's got a plan. I just hope he sticks to it. If you're a Mets fan, of course.
Definitely.
Yeah, because that you know what, it would be fun to see the Mets good, and like it did seem like, yeah, of course on paper like they're gonna do well this year. But I think you're right. Like, it was just kind of like the baseball gods were like, nah, sorry.
Not
this year for you guys. And it really wasn't because they got rid of everybody. Tommy Pham got traded too. We didn't mention him.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like it's kind of a lost season for the Mets. Very disappointing. The expectations were sky high this year, and they didn't live up to it. Like, they're 7 games back at the wild card right now. Just given how many teams are in the race, I really can't see them going and getting through everybody and making it unless everything went right, meaning they start playing really well and everyone else starts playing poorly. That is very wishful thinking. That's easier said than done. I can't see it, so I'm going to guess that we don't see the Mets past the end of September, which is insane because I'm sure a lot of people, well, maybe not everybody, but I'm sure there were people out there that picked them to win the World Series.
Yeah.
So it's strange. Very strange sport.
Yeah,
Let's
speaking
remember,
of this,
first overall podcast chose the Mets to win the World Series.
Well,
and they also chose the Padres and the Diamondbacks to progress. Let's just remind people of that. You know what? It's probably not a great marketing tool that I'm saying here, but we got to be known for something to begin with. So let's start with the bad omen.
we're here for bad
And
takes. Bad takes only.
Yeah, once
Freezing
we
takes.
once we
Yes.
establish that, I will call the Red Sox PR, and I will submit an article to the Red Sox stating that you're gonna win the ship next year, and I'm gonna see those guys tank.
Yeah.
so basically, what we got to do is we gotta pick a good team, and say they're gonna do well, and then we all gotta hammer that they do poorly.
Yeah, we
like,
can make some money off our bad
Dodgers
bad
to miss
luck.
the playoffs next year. Crazy, right? You'd think first overall said they're going to win the World Series. So now they're not even the fact they're not even going to win the World Series. They're not even going to make the postseason.
Yeah, it'll
So-
be down bad.
That National League West is going to be wide open, and they're our team. The Padres, the Diamondbacks, that's where they can swoop in. But no, it is crazy though, right? Like everyone can just predict, and they can tell you what's going to happen, but nobody knows anything, right? Just like these teams, we see how good teams are. Teams think, oh, well, our expectations are this or that. It doesn't really matter until the games are played. I know that's probably a very common cliche, but it's true, and I think people lose sight of that stuff. You just assume someone's going to do poorly and they do well, and vice versa, right?
Yeah.
So you really got to watch the game by game and follow the trends and see how these teams are actually performing, because you might just assume, the Mets, they did all this stuff in the offseason, they're probably doing well. No, they're probably not even going to make the playoffs this year. So it is very strange, and that's what kind of makes the season so fun. It wasn't like you guys remember back when the Warriors were just dominating the NBA and you knew they were going to win the World Series, the NBA title every year. It was kind of like, well, why do we care about the playoffs, or why do we care about the season? Because we know the Golden State's going to win, and they would do it, or they would at least make the finals against Cleveland, which was interesting to say the least. But you know what I mean? It's like it really is up for grabs, this World Series, and obviously they have your big teams like the Dodgers and the Braves, the Orioles, who we were all surprised by. But it's going to be fun, and I'm actually very intrigued. I mean, I'm always intrigued for the postseason, for sure. How can you not be, right? It's the best time of the year. October baseball is awesome. Even when it dips into November a little bit, that's cool too. But it really is wide open this year. I don't know if I have a favorite necessarily. I guess the Braves would probably be up there. But man, we could really see some teams that nobody really expected to do some damage, and it will be very interesting.
Yeah, and I think one more team we got to just touch on before we get out of here is Seattle too. Because Seattle came into the season with like super high expectations after slapping the crap out of the Jays in the playoffs, and of course like having that great series with the Astros after. They added in the offseason, and of course terrible first half of the year. Super up and down, but maybe a little bit more down than up. And they're another team like the Cubs, where they were going to be not quite a fire sale like the Mets, but Teoscar expiring deal was going to go. They sold their closer, Paul Sewald, of course. Ty France was another guy. They stand pat, and again, they're on a huge winning streak now. Only a game and a half out of the wild cards, and we know what Seattle's about, right? They get hot, look out. So I think that's another team that play their cards pretty well come the trade deadline, and I think they're going to make a good push. And I do think they're going to make the playoffs, which is maybe not great for Jays fans, but watch out for those Mariners, man.
Well, you mentioned I was just going to say, you mentioned they're on a big winning streak right now, man. Like they're 9-1 in their last 10. They won 7 straight, and they did sell at the deadline. They didn't add. They got rid of Sewald. Everyone expected Teoscar Hernandez to go, as you mentioned. He ended up staying pat, but they were kind of just ready to call it a season there, and look at it. Like, it's just now the whole focus of that team and that organization shifts because they might actually have a chance to make the postseason, and you're saying that they will, Andrew. So it's like, you never really know, right? The race is never over. Well, there you go. Yeah, the race is never over until it's finally over.
Yeah, they sold it. You know what? Sometimes less is more, right? And, they'll catch a hot streak, and the good thing about September baseball is that there's just that amount of baseball left for teams to fail, right? And we see it every year. And, going into September, you look back at the season and, teams are like, shit. By September 29th, you're like, I should have won that series against 4 of my division rivals. And that's what kind of helps these teams on the brink, because they went head-to-head with those teams during the season, and then they took advantage of that, right? Well, Toronto, Tampa, whoever else is in the race there, like they're gonna look back at possibly their matchup with Seattle, and it's gonna bite them in the ass one way or another, whether it works in their favor or not. So, I think if Seattle keeps on this hot streak, I think they're gonna be a dangerous opponent going into early October.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I agree. They're a team that nobody's, like I said, they're getting hot at the right time, and I know we're still kind of early to say that, but they're a team that once they get going, they got great pitchers. Their bullpen is good, even with Sewell gone, of course. That's why they got rid of him, right? They have so many riches in there, and of course their bats, right? They got a lot of guys who were underperforming to start the year, and they're starting to pick it up a little bit. Even our boy Julio, right? Like not a great start to the year, and he's been picking it up lately. So watch out for the Mariners, man. And it's a tough place to play. You've heard guys talk about that too, right? Especially like as Jays guys here. We see like the Jays go into town, and 3/4 of the stadium's full of Jays fans from the West Coast, and they can never win there for whatever reason. It's impossible. So.
Did you guys see when I know it didn't really last that long, but the Jays were recently in Seattle, and the Mariners. Was it their team shop that was selling Jays gear? I know that's old news. I just thought that we haven't talked about it on the podcast. I'm not saying we have to go into a conversation about it, but like that was just ridiculous.
That's
but that, you know what? Maybe that just kind of adds to that whole atmosphere of like, yeah, when the Jays go there, maybe that's of course unique to the Toronto and the Jays fans, but like, yeah, you go there, most of that ballpark is still Jays fans, but the Mariners still find a way. That's the thing, right? Like, you just never really know. You really never know. And it's strange, but I guess the nice thing about it, Jays fans aside, I'm going to ignore that for a second here. The nice thing about it with the Mariners, the nice thing about with everything we've kind of talked about today is that every game ever matters. We all know that, but especially now, every game matters. Every single at-bat matters. It's now or never. It's do or die. You have to be on the ball, no pun intended, going forward. And it's really, that's it. And the races are awesome. We talk about the National League mostly here, but the American League is no slouch as well. A couple of teams that we talk, like the Mariners, are in that sort of race right now. We won't talk about the Angels right now because we're going to probably call it here in a second, but I mean, that's an interesting situation. That might be a whole episode on its own, the Angels. But regardless, it's giving us some very fun baseball. We obviously have our top-heavy teams, our division leaders, our teams who we expect to always be in the playoffs. But the teams that are still fighting, the teams that are still in the hunt, it's really awesome to see. I don't know exactly who's going to get in, but it's making for a really fun last month and a half here of the regular season. And I can't wait to just continue watching all the games and, well, not every game, but, following along and seeing what happens.
It's the dog days, man. It's time to see who's got that dog in him.
You got that. Yeah. The only dog in baseball I know is Chris Bassett.
Chris Bassett's got that dog in him. I don't care.
Yeah, he's got that dog in him. It took me I'll admit, and unfortunately it took me a little longer to understand the joke, but I got it eventually. I'm not that stupid, but like sometimes I am. But no, you know what, man? It's been awesome. Hey, the Yankees are still kind of in it. You never know. Maybe we'll see. Maybe they'll pick things up. But it's been very well. Maybe. I'm not gonna say no. I'm gonna
have trouble beating the Red Sox.
Well, yeah. There you go. There you go. So it's like every
breaking my heart.
Well.
Breaking my heart.
That's what we do over here.
But hey, listen, if the Sox do go to the wild card race, then Boston's 10 hours from here.
Oh,
FYI.
Road trip.
That is true. So yeah.
And because of First Overall's great reputation with assisting these teams, I think we ought to make a trip across the border.
I'm always down. Playoff baseball?
I'm down. I've never been to Fenway, unfortunately. I've always wanted to go.
Actually, I've never been.
I went we did a tour. I didn't watch a game, but we did the tour, and it was awesome.
Oh,
but
that's awesome.
It's hilarious, though, because we're just going on a tangent for a second here, because like it's like the most historic park, and everyone loves it. It's basically like a historical heritage site right now. But like it's kind of like it's old, man. Like a lot of this stuff's run down, and like you see these things that have like 27 layers of paint on it, and you see each layer slowly chipping. Like the seats are like extended by like a quarter of an inch because like it's old. It's awesome to see, and I would love to watch a game in there. And it's the monster and everything's so cool. But man, it's old and it shows. She shows her age. That's for sure.
I've seen like, isn't there seats there where like you are really just like there's a foul, like not a foul pole, but like there is just like
there's literally a beam there, like got
scaffolding
in
just
the
like
way.
sat there, and it's like you can only watch the game if you go like I'm trying not to move too much, but if you're moving, it's like I'm not gonna sit there. I want to go, but I don't want to sit there. I want to.
And they got that old style too, where some of the seats, like all these new stadiums, the Rogers Center's doing it this offseason. Every single seat is going to be facing the game, right?
Right.
That's not the case at Fenway. There's some seats where you're sitting like this, and you're just like, it's just it's old, man, and it's awesome. Don't get me wrong, and I would love to go again and see a game there. But yeah, she definitely shows her age.
Well, people love like the historics of baseball, obviously, right? Like just I like to joke that the Rogers Center is kind of like a prison, which is very true. But it doesn't. It's awesome. For us, we all live in the in Ontario, so it's like. That's where we go to watch games, right? And it's fun. Jays games are always a good time.
It's our home.
But it doesn't have that old school feel. And I didn't get that until last summer. Andrew and I went to City Field to watch a Mets game. Nick, I know you're a Mets guy, of course. So
yeah. Why didn't you call me?
What?
First overall.
That's not the point of the story. That wasn't the point of the story.
I'll be that
guy.
You didn't answer.
Funny
enough, the point of that life before first overall. I know, I get it.
the funny part is the point of that trip was for a football game, and we just threw the baseball game in as a side, and arguably it was better than the football game. So
it's true.
What football game was that in Jersey?
Yeah, Giants and Panthers.
Yeah, listen, I was telling Mike right across MetLife is this new mall, the American Dream.
Yeah.
Oh, we went. Yeah.
We accidentally went in there because we
could
not.
Okay, so you guys seen it?
Yeah, we were trapped in the sea of highways that is MetLife, and we had no way to get home. So we literally had to walk to the other end of the mall, which took like maybe half hour, just to get to another spot that will hopefully get us an Uber. Like it was kind of scary. I'm not gonna lie, we couldn't get home, but the mall is crazy.
We had to download Lyft because we were in a Lyft
we had to use Lyft.
We had to use Lyft.
Yeah,
even when we went to the stadium, we're completely off topic. This is the baseball podcast, by the way. When we arrived at the stadium, like our driver let us off basically on the highway.
We were literally jaywalking across the highway. This guy's like, just get out here. Like, okay,
I've never
2 stars, sir.
Like I'm not saying I've jaywalked in my life, but never on a highway. So I would definitely not advise. Maybe on like a quiet street or something like that. But yeah,
especially in New York or New Jersey, that's
it's ridiculous.
And there's like, remember after the game, there's people like, as a Panthers fan in Panthers gear, there's people like offering me up to cars oncoming traffic, like just wanting me to go like lay down the road for them and get hit by cars. Ubers wouldn't pick us up. Like it was actually crazy.
It was wild. Yeah, that was
what a time.
It was a time. It was definitely a time.
Yeah,
and you know what else is a time? I had actually a nice segue and a nice transition to wrapping this up. You know what else is going to be a time, guys? Is watching the end of this regular season, because it's going to be quite a race. So I can't wait to see who makes it through to the postseason. Of course, we will definitely be speaking about it here on the podcast and maybe talk about it a little bit on the website as well, which we're working through right now. You can check us out on socials. We're on, where are we on, guys? Twitter, we're on Instagram, or X. Sorry, we're on X. We're on Instagram. We're on Instagram Threads, TikTok, YouTube, all the stuff, all the main, all the nice nitty gritty. Check us out at First Overall Media. We got a new logo as well, guys. We didn't really bring that up. Got some new stuff, new branding. It's exciting times.
FirstOverall.com. Check it out.
FirstOverall.com. New URL. Everything is all set. And yeah, we're doing some awesome things. So definitely stay tuned with us. And we got some really awesome content scheduled. Well, it'll be coming out shortly. And very excited for that. So thank you for tuning in to the First Overall Podcast, episode number 11, guys. Andrew D'Amato, Nick Prasad, thank you guys for being here. Any final words before we say goodbye?
Good luck to all the Padres and Mets fans out there. And it's going to be a tough time for you guys, but sucks to suck. What can I say?
I'm doing a solo pod on Boston tonight.
Well, all right then. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in to episode number 11 of the First Overall Podcast. Of course, powered by RINGSZN. We'll talk to you next time.
Peace.
Thanks for listening to the First Overall Podcast. Make sure you stay locked in for our next episode.